Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rebecca Hartley, and I am the Director of Operations for the Center for Workforce Development and CA2VES. We are going to be discussing with you today how to work with your local manufacturing extension partnerships in your state and region. Can you give us just a second and we will move to the next slide and go through the introductions of our panelists. And again, I'm Rebecca Hartley, Director of CA2VES in the Center for Workforce Development, and my colleague also from Clemson.
And I'm Jenny Moore, and I work for Clemson Online as the Director of Program and Partnership Development, and we partner a great deal with CA2VES in the curriculum and instruction design process.
And I'm Chuck Spangler, President of SCMEP.
And I'm Andy Carr, Senior Vice President of Operations for SCMEP.
Okay, just working through just to make sure we've got all of our technical sound difficulties handled. Okay, so today we're going to talk about strategic partnerships. We're going to go through a quick introduction between myself and Jenny to talk with you about the process for initiating, leveraging, and maintaining your partnerships. And then the bulk of the presentation is going to be handled by our colleagues at SCMEP to talk through a little bit about what SCMEP is, some of the specific South Carolina data, and then some testimonials on how folks have worked with this MEP in a successful way. So just a quick overview of the Center for Workforce Development at Clemson. If you're not familiar, we have a National Science Foundation Advanced Technological Education Center called CA2VES. And the Center for Workforce Development is the bigger umbrella for all of our workforce development initiatives. But this is part of our CA2VES webinar series. And so we'll talk with you a little bit today about our partnerships, but just to let you know that the other 4 areas that we are engaged through the center. The first is digital learning tools. A lot of you are probably familiar with our educateworkforce.com site, which is our learning management platform. We house a variety of manufacturing curricula as well as our virtual reality simulations to accompany those tools. We also provide STEM K-12 engagement initiatives as well as pathway development initiatives, really supporting our two-year college avenues in advanced manufacturing curricula, as well as our STEM and engineering opportunities through our 4-year colleges with 2-year colleges as well. And then the last piece for us is our research and advocacy, really supporting career awareness for advanced manufacturing. We particularly focus on the transportation industry and advanced manufacturing, but use those digital learning tools as a way to support that advocacy message of the importance of these careers. And so we wanted to talk about our partners. We have government leaders. You can see some of our logos from our partners here in this level. We've got a second level of partners with industry organizations, our 2-year college experts, and 2-year college partners that help us with development of the curricula and help us to vet that. and then our current and future workforce. I think our partners at SCMEP can fall into, both this level 2 and 3 categories, because they also help us with connections for industry and partners that will become subject matter experts. But then they're also training the next generation workforce, working with incumbent workers, and supporting the small and medium advanced manufacturing industries within South Carolina, as well as MEPs in each of your states would be doing. And then I'll let Jenny talk with you about how we leverage partnerships, and then we'll move into our presentations part with SCMEP.
So as Rebecca covered, we've got those 3 levels of partnerships. And if you want to learn a little bit more detail about kind of the processes that we use when we are developing partnerships, each of those 3 types, and how we work with them in a little bit more detail, we did do our last webinar on strategic partnering. So we're more than happy to send you a link to that, the video of that webinar if you're interested. But today we just want to give a quick overview of how we leverage each level and how that relates to the completion of some of our goals when it comes to the actual deliverables, the courses that we create in order to support the workforce, companies, and of course, economic growth. So we engage and communicate with all 3 levels of our partners, including SCMEP, in such a way that we gather feedback, we do needs assessments, we ensure that the projects that we're working on are in line with the needs of the workforce and the companies we work with as well. And then we also take it a step further and work with these partners as subject matter experts, where they work in an iterative way with our team to observe the objectives that we're creating and give us feedback on them, and then make sure that as we develop our activities, the content itself, and develop the virtual reality and all of the other pieces that go into the courses in the final deliverable, that they give us feedback to inform us of any changes that need to be made to align better with partner needs and needs of the workforce today. And that allows us to have a greater impact on the economy, on the workforce, and the companies that we partner with.
So I'm going to turn it over to Chuck and Andy to talk with you about SCMEP. I think this will better help you to understand how you can engage with MEPs, and then we'll have time for questions throughout the presentation for you to incorporate those into the Q&A, but we'll work to address those at the end of the presentation. So Chuck?
Hey, good afternoon. Thank you for being on the webinar today. Chuck, President of SMEP. Just want to kind of hit the national level with you. The Manufacturing Extension Partnership Program is sponsored by NIST, the National Institute for Standards and Technology, which is a federal agency under the United States Department of Commerce. It was founded in 1989 by Senator Fritz Hollins, and they're now called the Hollins Manufacturing Institute. So we're happy about that. SMEP was one of the first 3 original centers started back in 1989. The others were Ohio and New York. And currently today, there's 51 centers across the United States. So SMEP is the only MEP center in South Carolina, which we're really proud of. And it takes, for us to be successful, we have to work with a lot of different partners across the state. It's very critical to our success. To give you an idea, our year just ended in June. We completed 592 projects. We had 79 open enrollment courses to help with the workforce development and certifications. We actually did projects with 326 companies, and 239 companies attended our open enrollments. We did 225 joint site visits with the Department of Commerce this past year. And so for SMEP to be successful, we only have 20 total employees in our company. So to do that kind of volume, we really have to leverage partnerships. And for our model, we're at 60% broker, which we rely on third-party network, all kind of partners around the state and the country to help us. And 40% of that is our internal staff. I will let you know that wherever you're at across the United States, that NIST MEP, the National MEP, really has a focus on the MEP centers, really partnering with everybody in their state to help with everything that we can to improve manufacturing, get the word out about manufacturing, educate people about how this is a great place, manufacturing is a great place for employment. So we're very pleased about that is a big initiative to let everybody know that NIST, so you can go to NIST.org and find the local MEP in your state, and you'll find the right person that you need to contact if you'd like to partner or talk with the MEP across the country. To let you know, due to our partners and their help, they've been very critical in our success. In 2016, SMEP had a $1.5 billion impact. You'll be able to see that from the new sales, investments, and number of jobs created, retained in the companies that we served during the fiscal year 2016. So the only way we could accomplish all this is due to all the partnerships and great third-party network that we have all across the state. So with that, I'm going to kind of turn it over to Andy and kind of let him help educate you what's going on in South Carolina.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Again, thanks for joining the webinar. I'm going to give a little bit of data on manufacturing here in South Carolina, so you get a little bit of perspective of basically what's out there in South Carolina and the client base that we work with. Okay, there's over 5,000 manufacturing enterprises in South Carolina. And when you look at the overall South Carolina economy, it's actually quite a small percentage of the businesses. It represents only 4.5% of all the businesses in South Carolina. However, when you look at the payroll, those 4.5%, 5,000 plus manufacturers, they pay 20% of all the wages in the state. So very disproportionate in terms of the payroll that's provided by manufacturing businesses. If you look at the actual average salary for a manufacturing job in South Carolina, it's just under $54,500. For the average salary for other jobs in South Carolina is around about $40,800. So there's almost a 30% disparity, or 30% stronger or larger salaries in the manufacturing sector versus all others in South Carolina. So that's why it's important to the economy here. That's why it gets a lot of focus from the folks in our entire workforce development community, from the Department of Commerce, the MEP, our technical college system, our friends at the state universities. Okay. In terms of the manufacturers, if you go online or read any of the newspapers in South Carolina, the companies that tend to generate the most column inches are the very large ones, the very large manufacturers who make significant, actually huge investments in the state. They tend to be the GEs, the Boeings, the BMWs, and the Michelins. But if you actually take a look at the demographics of those 5,000 plus manufacturers in South Carolina, you'll find something that surprises most people. It actually surprised us when we first started looking at these numbers several years ago. Basically, we have, out of those 5,000 plus manufacturers, 3,800 of them have fewer than 20 employees. I mean, it's just a huge number. We are basically a state of very small manufacturers. Those companies, those GEs, the Boeings, the BMWs, the Michelins, those manufacturing powerhouses, we actually only have 67 companies in South Carolina that employ more than 500 people. So MEPs, our focus is always small and medium. So we've got, we've got a rather nice segment to go after here in South Carolina. So the other interesting thing is when you actually look at that and that makeup of manufacturers, you'll find out that that distribution holds up pretty well across the US. It's not just South Carolina that has lots and lots of small manufacturers. It's the US. We are actually a nation of small and medium-sized manufacturers. Okay. In terms of geographical distribution, if you look at South Carolina, and basically on this map, the darker the blue, the more manufacturers there are. Anybody that's familiar with will know here in the upstate, Greenville, Spartanburg, Pickens, Anderson, basically the I-85 corridor. a great concentration of manufacturers in that area. Always was traditionally a lot of textile equipment manufacturers in that area. And the area, those, there's still some here, but a lot have been replaced over the years. And again, very much a manufacturing powerhouse. In the Midlands, we have Lexington and Richland, and also to the west, Aiken, basically the I-20 corridor. We have, again, a good concentration of manufacturers there. And then in the Low Country, Charleston, Dorchester, Berkeley County, around about Charleston, South Carolina, again, quite strong. Two that often surprise people, we have in Florence, quite a density of manufacturers there. And then Horry County, which most people know is where Myrtle Beach is, and that's all golf and tourism and fun, but there's a lot of people employed in manufacturing there also. One other thing before we leave that, I did talk earlier about a state of small manufacturers. There's often a notion that the small manufacturers are actually located in rural counties. And again, when you dig into the data here in South Carolina, that's not the case. Those small manufacturers, those under 20s, they line up exactly with the concentration of manufacturers. They're in the upstate, they're in the Midlands, and they're in the Charleston area. So it really is a myth that the small guys are all out in the rural counties. They're not. Okay. Taking a look at actually what those manufacturers make in South Carolina, by taking a look at the NEICS code, by far and away the most manufacturers are involved in, as I would call it, meadow bashing. So machine shops, fab shops. It does seem in South Carolina you can't drive more than 2 miles without running into at least 2 of them. But other areas showing diversification, reasonable amount of food manufacturers. Again, perhaps not surprising in our state. We have a lot of forests, so there's a lot of wood manufacturing here as well. Printing, a significant number of printers here in South Carolina. Chemical manufacturers, and then again we've got at the bottom there 500 miscellaneous manufacturers. But again, far and away fabrication machine shops. That's what we're about here in South Carolina. Okay. In terms of economic development, we've got Team South Carolina here, many different players, and I think one thing that the state has really benefited from in terms of economic development, certainly over the last 10 years, is a very good alignment of the resources in economic development and a real sense of purpose and a clear mission. And there's been a huge focus on recruiting manufacturers there. In 2016, 150 projects were announced. That's new plants and also expansions to existing plants. The value of those investments was $4.2 billion. The jobs reported from those new projects, 17,280. And also in conjunction with that, in 2016, South Carolina actually hit a new record when it came to export dollars, and reaching a total of $31.3 billion in exports. Taking a look at the economic development, the top 10 economic development announcements in 2016, if you rank them by capital investment, I think the first 5 are certainly manufacturers. We have Teijin, which is a carbon fiber company from Japan, investing $600 million in Greenwood County. China Jushi is a fiberglass manufacturer, investing $300 million in Richland County in the Midlands. Our friends Michelin, who appear year in and year out, again, substantial investment there, this time in Spartanburg County, $270 million. And interestingly, a solar company. This one's actually not a manufacturer, it's actually a solar farm that's going into Aiken and Clarendon counties there. And then another large manufacturer, Robert Bosch there, investing $175 million in their Charleston facility. Okay. If you rank them by the jobs created, it gets you get a little bit different perspective here. The first 3 companies there on there are actually, the first one, CompuCom Systems, actually an IT solutions provider there. And their expansion resulted in 1,500 announced jobs. Anyone home as a call center, as is Comcast. They're also call centers. The first manufacturer appears in 4th place, and that's Magna Seating, who announced an expansion of 480 jobs in Spartanburg. So very interesting. The top 3 are all call centers. And I couldn't resist it. I had to do a little bit digging. And apparently the research shows that people like to talk to Southern people in call centers. Their accents are more trustworthy. So I'm just going to throw that one out there. Okay. If we look at the industry recruitment in South Carolina in 2016, in terms of the percentage of jobs recruited, 54% was with manufacturers, 36% in the service industry. Warehouse and distribution, which is a sector that we're starting to see significant growth in, it was responsible for 9%, and the others accounted for 1%. Again, if you look at it from the perspective of capital investment, not surprising there that manufacturing, which is generally a capital intensive business, and particularly with those large announcements there, fiberglass and carbon fiber manufacturing, manufacturing was responsible for 76% of the investment, service 12%, warehouse and distribution 11%, others 1%. Okay. In terms of the jobs created, new facilities accounted for 67% of the jobs created, and expansions accounted for 33% of new jobs. Again, just backing that up, the manufacturers, the preference there still tends to be towards the urban areas. The job recruitment or the job creation, 73% of those jobs were created in urban areas, 27% in the rural areas. Okay, I mentioned the new record in exports, 31.3 billion. Basically, that's a 26% increase over the past 6 years. Okay, so where did those exports from South Carolina go? Well, 20% to China, 12% to Germany, 11% to our friends over the border in Canada, the United Kingdom with 9%, and Mexico with 7%. But 41% was accounted for by all other nations. So there's definitely some preferred trading partners there, but again, it is not narrow. It's very, very wide in terms of where South Carolina's exports go. Okay. 2 specific industries or manufacturing clusters that the state has focused on over the years in terms of economic development, basically being the automotive sector and then also the aerospace. The automotive sector, there was a presence here, but it really started to boom when BMW located here in the upstate about 26, 27 years ago. Their presence and then the recruitment of their supply chain. Now the fact that we're adding a Volvo manufacturing facility in Charleston, and then also the expansion of the Mercedes plant in Charleston. It's obviously automotive is a big draw here in South Carolina. South Carolina, and this surprises a lot of people, is actually the #1 exporter of cars in the U.S. And trust me, you'll see lots and lots of BMWs on the highways here. I think there's at least 1 train a day leaves the upstate laden with BMWs that goes to the port in Charleston for export. We're also the #1 exporter of tires, or TARS if you're really Southern. But overall, 400 automotive-related companies in South Carolina, 66,000 people employed in that automotive cluster. And basically, 11% of the state's workforce is in manufacturing. 27% of that 11% actually works in the automotive cluster. So very, very important. Feeds an awful lot of people and their families here in South Carolina. And again, just to look at that, some of those numbers in perspective compared with the total of the U.S., I mean, basically 18% of the passenger vehicles exported come from South Carolina, and 30% of the tires are made here in South Carolina. Okay. As I mentioned, aerospace, that's another focus for recruitment, economic development. and capacity in the area of aircraft and aerospace. And again, that can be traced through, there's always been a presence here, military bases and such like. But again, the expansion all started in 2008, 2009, when Boeing bought over a couple of their suppliers here, and then expanded in Charleston to actually have their I think it's the first manufacturing facility in the U.S. outside of Washington. It's there at Charleston's International Airport, and it's it's a very, very impressive facility. Manufactures 787 Dreamliners. And you can see basically where that's gone, taking us from basically 0.1 billion in 2011, and export sales of aircraft is now up to 5.7 billion. So another sector that's really kicked in here. In terms of the other data, it's worth about 19 billion in sales in total, and that's between the private sector and the 4 aerospace military facilities here. Supports 102,000 jobs, 400 private sector firms, again, the 5.7 billion in exports. And again, when we look at workforce and we look at the incentive to go into those areas, we've talked about the differential between manufacturing jobs, the average salary in manufacturing jobs, and the average salary in South Carolina. If you then separate out aerospace, that's pretty impressive, 71,000, versus just over 50 for the average manufacturing job. So again, another huge differential for the people that work in aerospace manufacturing. Great employee growth there. Basically, the number of employees in aerospace, the growth rate there, 11.4%, while the state average is 1.4. Average annual state tax revenue, 532 million. And then, the total economic impact from the aerospace sector, absolutely huge, 17 billion. Okay. So that's hopefully a little oversight into, a little overview into South Carolina, the type of manufacturers that we have here, where they're located, geographically, the sectors they work in, and then the economic development focus, in particular in recruiting aerospace and automotive companies to the state.
So then the next thing that we wanted to do was show you guys kind of a compilation of some of the testimonials that you can find actually on scmep.org if you want to take a look at it. I think there's like 8 of them. This is kind of a short version of 3 of them put together, just so that we could give some broad points as to how SCMEP has helped some of these companies grow.
Guardian Fifth Supplies was started in 1981. We manufacture chain link wire, barbed wire, small wire parts. The first thing that SCMEP provided for us was training and inventory control. What we learned was the cost of inventory is very high, and that often we can afford to pay a little bit more for our product and keep our inventory dollars out of the warehouse. Second area that we dealt with was marketing. And then the last one we did was a program of training, and that training was for our employees in the warehouse and production. I was questionable as to whether this was going to be a success, but it turned out being a huge success. And they really bought into the program.
I'm Dave Kroger, President and CEO of Kroger Marine Construction. We started our business about 28 years ago. We manufacture floating docks. We represent several types of boat lifts, and we have barges that haul heavy rock and heavy equipment across the water, and we do erosion control. Being involved with SCMEP, I believe, has truly helped this small business increase and raise our professionalism. And that goes a long ways. It helps how we are viewed in the community, how we are viewed by our customers, and how our employees feel about this company. Everything that we do has an impact on all those areas, and that's been a very important thing for us.
Cortex is a company which is part of a larger organization called Arkema Group. and we are a rheology modifier. We have a site across the globe. We make rheology modifier. These product goes into paint and dispersing agents. SCMEP has proposed a leadership development program for our site, and they showed us what it will do to employees, and we've been always looking for this kind of opportunity to have our employees get more engaged. And one thing we noticed after going through the program, we used to have different shifts and they used to compete with all the time with each other. And they still compete with each other, but one thing I noticed after going through this program, these employees will actually collaborate and still compete and help each other out to do better. And that's where SCMEP program, leadership program, has helped our frontline managers actually work together and with the common goal of making the company better.
Okay, so like we said, I know it's probably not extremely easy to hear that version of it just because we don't, the sound's not integrated to the webinar, but we will make these slides available as well as a recording of the webinar. So you guys will be able to check out that version of the compilation of the videos. But then again, if you want to see a little bit more detail, you can go to scmep.org and check out some other testimonials.
So we would just want to check and see if anyone had any questions at this point for Chuck or Andy or for us. You can type those into the Q&A and we're happy to answer those. We just really wanted to give you an idea from this webinar of what MEPs do. You can see that they have an extensive data set for their specific state, and that might be helpful to you, particularly if you are in advanced manufacturing education, to have a good sense of that type of data. Also, if you are at a high school and have professional development opportunities for your teachers and guidance counselors, that would be helpful for you to know as well. So let me stop and answer this question. It says, what is the best way to approach a company about using SCMEP services? Chuck or Andy?
I'll take it. Hey, we appreciate that question. Thank you very much. The best thing is just what we like is just to contact me, Chuck Spangler, or Andy. Email us, let us know, and then we'll be more than happy to contact the company. We get a lot of referrals that come in that way. And so we'll be more than happy to discuss and talk with and visit our the website.
Yep. And then there's a request for information on the website. Send that, and somebody will respond to you within 24 hours.
Would you assume that any other state would have a similar process at their MEPs in case this question is not South Carolina specific?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you can just go, like I said, to the national website, MEP website, MEP, and you can find that state, click on it, and then you'll go right to the center directors.
Okay.
And it'll have information that you can click there, let them know what you need, and they'll respond very quick.
Okay.
So that's all 51 states across the country.
Okay.
That's all you need to do. It's very easy and very quick.
Right. Okay. Perfect. Any other questions as we're thinking through partnerships with MEPs and how to connect with them? I know that we can help you follow up through our contacts at NIST MEP if you have a specific question about your state's MEP, but I think Chuck and Andy are a good example of how this works in a specific state and how you might engage the MEPs not only for industry, but also to help you with information that can help you with your educational training for your students. And we're going to go back to the, right, and that website is nist.gov/MEP. So we're going to take it back to our slide with all of our contact information. You can contact any of us with any questions you may have. particularly if CAVES could assist you in anything that you're doing with virtual reality and curricula. And I think we'll probably leave it here if there's no other questions, but as Jenny mentioned, we'll have this recorded. We have recorded this and we'll have it on our website shortly for you to view. So thanks everyone for your time this afternoon, and please contact us with any questions that you have.